5 Saki AM, the kind of silence you hear only in the moments before history changes. In the darkness above Western Russia, the world's most advanced stealth fighters slip through the clouds, invisible to every radar, every lookout, every hope of defense. At ground level, soldiers stand guard, unaware that within 60 seconds their world will ignite. Across the globe, intelligence satellites blink and flicker as encrypted messages flash. Operation Iron Veil has begun. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe. This is the front line where history becomes legend. One strike, one morning can change everything. It started with a single transmission. A Russian military base, codenamed Zarya 17, identified as the nerve center of Moscow's new offensive. Over weeks, NATO analysts tracked convoys streaming in night after night, fuel tankers, missile launchers, rail cars unloaded by masked crews. Drone footage captured the construction of new bunkers, the hurried fortification of anti-air batteries, the steady rhythm of war drums under the pretense of peace. Until tonight, Zarya 17 was an untouchable fortress 500 miles from the nearest border, shielded by 4-layered missile defense systems and the most sensitive surveillance technology Russia could muster. But war's calculus changed before dawn. Far above, F-35 Lightning IIs and F-22 Raptors soar at low altitude, avionics silent, hulls coated in radar-absorbing polymer built for moments exactly like this. Each is loaded with a single devastating payload, precision bunker-buster bombs engineered to shatter concrete, hardened against all but the very latest Western munitions. They cut the engines and glide. Inside Zarya 17, a skeleton crew monitors blinking screens, unaware that every encrypted radio call and fiber optic pulse has been mapped, triangulated, and methodically isolated. In the command center, a colonel stares at his coffee, reading overnight reports. Ukrainian artillery detected 2 sectors east, all quiet otherwise. He has less than 90 seconds. At precisely 5:01 a.m., the world flickers. The first guided bomb tears through over 3 meters of composite concrete, landing directly in the operations bunker. The detonation radiates outward, a tidal wave of force that liquefies steel and rips cables from conduits. In a split second, decades of planning, 2 years of supplies, and every ounce of confidence vanish in a blaze of searing white light. Other bombs follow, walk the grid, fuel depots erupt, a barracks collapses inward, a radar mast arcs across the sky trailing smoke. Shards of glass and earth rain down over 5 city blocks. Within 44 seconds, the heart of Zarya 17 has turned to scorched earth. Yet the spectacle goes largely unseen. Stealth fighters pivot, vanish into the clouds, gone before anyone knows the sky has changed. The alarm sirens wail half a minute too late. Russian S-400 missile launchers, hailed as impenetrable, try to lock on. Their screens are static. Jammer 9, a shadow drone released minutes earlier, has washed every frequency in digital noise. No missile ever launches. On the dawn horizon, flames silhouette the remains of watchtowers, and the smoke column climbs high enough for NATO satellites and half the world's intelligence agencies to watch in real time. But it is the panic on the ground, confused orders, blaring radios, medics stumbling through blackened tunnels that truly marks the end of invincibility. Why here? Why now? Over the preceding 10 days, intercepted Russian radio traffic hinted at a gathering storm. Armored regiments amassed for a new push west. A rumored shipment of warheads diverted from the distant Urals. Batteries of Iskander and Caliber cruise missiles awaiting orders to roll. While Western leaders debated, one message grew inescapable. Zarya 17 was about to become the launch pad for the war's next great escalation, a dagger pointed both at Ukraine's cities and NATO's credibility. But the West, tonight, acted first. Every aspect bore the mark of modern asymmetric warfare. The attackers were few, their preparation relentless. Stealth, not brute strength, would be the weapon that broke Russia's fortress. Satellite analysts spent weeks mapping blind spots, charting radar overlaps, identifying precisely when log shifts left the base most vulnerable. For 41 minutes before the strike, an American cyber team deep in Virginia silently looped every camera feed from inside Zarya 17, projecting a frozen status quo to Moscow's high command. Even if someone sensed trouble, the alarms would never reach the capital in time. On approach, the stealth wing flew nap of the earth across 300 kilometers of hostile territory, hugging river valleys and hill shadows, their radar signatures smaller than a hummingbird's. Their inward comms were whispers, pre-scripted and rehearsed obsessively. Target mark, payload armed, confirm silence. Each pilot knew they carried not just military might, but the weight of a promise to a besieged region. Tonight, fear does not belong to you. Indeed, after the bombs fell, the world reacted with confusion and awe. Russian social media lit up with unconfirmed reports of thunderous explosions in the pre-dawn blackness. Videos uploaded, then quickly erased, showed bursts of bluish light on the horizon and the orange glow of fires unchecked. Official statements at first denied anything unusual. Only hours later did state news admit an incident, citing malfunctioning equipment, refusing to utter the word everyone already suspected: attack. But eyewitnesses told a different story. A medic from a nearby town described seeing a wall of fire. Buildings simply weren't there anymore. Others spoke of desperate evacuation, of armored personnel carriers racing wounded away as power outages blanketed the district. Air raid sirens, silent for months, returned in a trembling chorus. Inside NATO headquarters, first reports filtered in. Primary target eliminated, collateral minimal, strike group egressed undetected. In Kyiv, relief and disbelief mingled. Russia's supposedly untouchable fortress, now a smoking ruin, its mighty S-400s left mute by tricks and tools, born of a decade of cyber warfare and technological leapfrogging. By midday, as reconnaissance confirmed the obliteration, storehouses, maintenance depots, and communication nodes all destroyed, the nature of the war itself began to shift. Kremlin officials, caught off guard, scrambled to identify how stealth fighters pierced undefeated defenses. For months, propagandists had insisted no foreign plane dare violate Russian skies. Now, whispers of vulnerability and betrayal began to circulate, silencing generals and rattling troops deployed along every contested front. News agencies from Tokyo to London carried variants of one phrase: at 5 a.m., the myth of Russian invulnerability was shattered. But for the men and women on the ground, it was more than myth. It was the night when the line between hunter and hunted blurred forever. This wasn't just an assault on a base. It was a message delivered in steel and silence. No fortress is too distant, no weapon too advanced, no regime beyond reach of those who refuse to surrender. And as smoke rose over Zarya 17, the world understood. The battlefield is everywhere, and the advantage no longer belongs to the side with the highest walls, but to the side that can move unseen in the darkness before dawn. Subscribe now, because this is only the beginning. The next strike could be anywhere, and you'll hear it here first. The first light of dawn barely touched the horizon when Zarya 17, once a symbol of Russian military might, lay in ruins. What moments ago was a sprawling fortress, buzzing with the hum of armored vehicles, heavy machinery and radio chatter, had now been reduced to a smoldering labyrinth of shattered concrete and twisted steel. Inside the shattered command bunker, the air hung thick with smoke and acrid heat. Walls had collapsed inward, burying equipment and personnel beneath layers of rubble. Survivors staggered through the debris-filled corridors, some clutching bleeding wounds, others in stunned silence. The air raid sirens finally wailed, but it was too late. The element of surprise had been absolute. Across the sprawling base, the devastation was staggering. Satellite images released hours later revealed fuel depots reduced to molten craters, warehouses engulfed in flames that still flickered against the grey morning skies. The deafening roar of secondary explosions echoed over the nearby forests like the booming aftermath of a volcanic eruption. Dozens of vehicles lay overturned, torched beyond recognition. Rows of missile launchers were obscured beneath layers of black smoke and ash. Russian troops, caught unprepared, scrambled in chaos. Attempts to mount a coordinated defense crumbled as communication lines severed. Radios emitted nothing but static. Encrypted messaging systems failed under the cyber assault that had silently accompanied the physical strike. Command centers went dark. Panic rippled outward. Officers shouted orders lost in a sea of confusion. Evacuations began hastily, but pathways were clogged with casualties and destroyed equipment. Medical units struggled to organize as the first wounded filtered in. Field medics described scenes of desperation. Soldiers with burns from ruptured fuel tanks, shrapnel wounds inflicted by collapsing infrastructure, and blunt trauma from detonating munitions. Some victims were trapped beneath collapsed structures. Rescuers had to dig through debris with bare hands to pull them free. The cacophony of explosions, alarms, and cries for help painted a grim tableau of war's harshest realities. Losses were swift and severe. Though exact figures remained classified, Western intelligence sources estimated that over 200 Russian soldiers were killed or seriously injured in the initial strike alone. Critical infrastructure supporting the Russian Southern Command was shattered. The destruction of communication arrays severed coordination lines not only within the base, but across the entire sector. Russian units awaiting orders found themselves isolated, directionless amidst the chaos. Perhaps most telling was the collapse of air defense coverage. The once formidable S-400 battalions, armored and shielded by layered electronic countermeasures, failed to track even a single incoming stealth fighter or missile. The digital fog cast by the Jammer 9 drones had blinded radar screens, forcing missile batteries into silent confusion. Attempts to retaliate with counterfire or scramble interceptors were frustrated at every turn. For the first time, the aura of Russian aerial dominance had been penetrated without warning. The psychological impact was profound. Conversations leaked through Russian social media and intercepted communications revealed disbelief and alarm within the ranks. How did they get in? Became the prevailing question among officers and soldiers alike. Commanders grappled with the uncertainty of vulnerability in what had been considered a secure rear position far from the front lines, with multiple defensive layers. On the streets of Sochi and neighboring towns, residents awoke to tremors and the distant glow of fires. Many had believed the war was a faraway specter confined to battlefields distant from civilian life. On this morning, the war came ashore. No longer a distant thunder, but a roaring tidal wave of destruction within striking distance of their homes. Civilian infrastructure surrounding the base, including supply hubs and transport lines, was severely affected. The strike's shockwave crippled key fuel reserves essential not only for military vehicles, but also for civilian transport and energy needs. Blackouts unfolded across districts as power substations located near the blast zones were damaged or destroyed. Emergency services mobilized to control fires that threatened nearby residential zones and to assist displaced residents caught in the fallout. International eyes quickly turned to the aftermath. Intelligence agencies across NATO and allied nations analyzed satellite imagery showing massive craters, fallen antennas, and charred vehicle wreckage. Analysts noted the precision of the strike suggested unparalleled coordination between manned stealth assets and unmanned electronic warfare systems. The headlines were unanimous. A new era of modern warfare. Invasion foiled by precision overwhelming, and Russia's invincibility questioned. Within hours, political capitals buzzed with emergency sessions. NATO's military committee convened to assess the potential for escalation, while diplomatic facilities prepared for intense back-channel conversations aimed at de-escalation. The strike was not only a military blow, but an unmistakable strategic message. The West retained the capability and willingness to project power deep into Russian-held territory. Moscow's official response was tightly controlled, restrictive, and muted. State media downplayed the incident, attributing the destruction to accidental technical malfunctions or sabotage by unknown third parties, avoiding words like attack or strike. However, independent sources within the Russian military leaked fragments of truth, silent eyewitness accounts of blasted bunkers and frantic recovery efforts. Rumors of high-level firings and disciplinary investigations quickly spread. One particularly sensitive development was the abrupt dismissal of the regional commanding officer responsible for the base's security. Insider reports described a palpable atmosphere of blame and recrimination in military circles. Commanders were pressured not only to understand what had failed, but to prevent such a breach from ever recurring in the face of growing threats. Beyond immediate military damage, long-term implications emerged almost overnight. The loss of logistical capacity at Zarya 17 forced Russian armored units on the southern front to reroute fuel and ammunition, delaying resupply missions and complicating operational planning. Frontline commanders reported sluggish replenishments and increased vulnerability in key sectors. For Ukrainian forces and their Western supporters, the strike represented a morale-boosting pivot point. It revalidated efforts toward asymmetric warfare strategies, combining cyber operations, drone technology, and precision strikes. Military strategists praised the operation as a textbook example of leveraging technology and intelligence with surgical timing to dismantle strengths once considered impregnable. As dusk fell over Europe, the smoke from the ruins continued to rise. In war rooms across Kyiv, Washington, and Brussels, analysts debated not if, but when, the next strike would follow. How Moscow would recalibrate its air defense and internal security in response remained an ongoing question. But one certainty lingered. The balance of power had shifted, if only slightly, and with it, the psychological terrain of the war had taken a decisive turn. On the ground in and around Zarya 17, soldiers and commanders faced a stark new reality. The myth of an untouchable rear was shattered. No location was beyond reach, no base too fortified, no defense system infallible. Constant vigilance and adaptation were now mandatory. This strike was more than the destruction of a base. It was a wake-up call, a brutal reminder that the modern battlefield was fluid, invisible, and unforgiving. Technologies once relegated to theory had arrived in force. Stealth fighters paired with electronic warfare drones, cyber disruptions integrated with physical attacks, and precision munitions shaping battles before boots even touched the ground. As the sun dipped below the horizon, survivors sifted through the ruins, not only to salvage equipment and bodies, but to grasp the full magnitude of what had occurred. The world had witnessed a proof of concept. In this new era, dominance was not purely a function of size, numbers, or firepower, but of speed, secrecy, and adaptability. And the repercussions were just beginning. As night gave way to day, the reverberations of the 5 a.m. strike had already left an indelible mark far beyond the smoking ruins of Zarya 17. Military analysts across the globe pored over data, questioning long-held assumptions about warfare in the 21st century. This was no longer just about tanks and missiles, it was warfare redefined by invisibility, precision, and the fusion of digital and physical domains. Stealth fighters delivered more than ordnance, they delivered a message. In the modern battlefield, dominance belongs to the unseen and the unexpected. No fortress, no matter how fortified, is immune. In diplomatic circles, the incident escalated tensions at lightning speed. Moscow's air of confidence cracked as officials convened emergency meetings behind closed doors, monitoring intelligence feeds that revealed vulnerabilities once thought theoretical. Allies of Russia expressed concern. Uncertainty spread within the Kremlin about the readiness and reliability of their defenses. For NATO and its partners, the strike underscored a renewed sense of urgency and unity. It proved strategic deterrence extended beyond mere nuclear posturing. It required technological innovation and rapid adaptability. Ideas previously confined to war colleges, cyber-physical convergence, asymmetric strikes, multi-domain operations, were now no longer just concepts, but operational reality. Still, the threat of escalation loomed large. Experts warned that Moscow could respond with force in unexpected theaters or accelerate its own development of counter-stealth technologies and drone swarms designed to neutralize this new type of strike. The delicate balance that had kept direct confrontations at bay was now severely tested. As for the soldiers and commanders on both sides, the psychological impact was profound and lasting. No longer could rear bases be taken for granted. Every base, supply line, and command post was a potential target. This knowledge altered war plans, troop deployments, and daily routines across contested regions. Back in Kyiv, the strike was hailed as a symbol of resilience and technical mastery, proof that determination and ingenuity could level the playing field, even against formidable adversaries. Conversations buzzed about future missions, the next targets, and how technology would continue to shape the fate of nations. But amid the tactical and strategic analysis, one question lingered for civilians, commanders, and world leaders alike. How far would the fight escalate, and at what cost? War had changed, but so had the stakes. This operation was more than a tactical victory. It was a turning point. A call to adapt, innovate, and never underestimate the power of surprise. The battlefield no longer belonged solely to the visible and the powerful, but also to the clever, the swift, and the unseen. If today's story shook your understanding of modern conflict, don't forget to show your support. Like this video, subscribe for the latest updates, and share your thoughts below. What do you think comes next in this high-stakes game of shadows? Stay alert. Stay informed. The fog of war is lifting slowly, and those who control the dawn will shape the future. Because in war, it's not just how hard you strike, it's whether you strike first and disappear before the world can respond.